Is now a good time to be an entrepreneur in rural Alaska? No, now is a great time to be an entrepreneur in rural Alaska. I think that it's also a necessary time for rural Alaska to look to entrepreneurship, to look within their communities for the economic drivers that will get them through the tight times with oil and with other reductions in state spending. I think that, as Alaskans, this is what we do best, right? When your neighbor has a problem, when somebody's house is on fire or somebody's in an accident, you don't call for help. There's no one to call to. It's, you all band together as a community and you make things better. You use the tools and the skills that you have on hand and you solve the problem. I mean, that's the quintessential Alaskan way. We've done it before, we'll do it again. And I think that the more people that really embrace the idea of a rural entrepreneur, it's not going to look like entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley, but I don't want it to, and I don't think it should. It's going to look like everything we do, typically Alaskan. And that will make it, I think, even stronger. I think that some of the advantages come from the fact that there are so many people interested in making rural economies succeed, right? I mean, not just in these communities, but even here in Anchorage, there's so many people that are interested in trying to figure out how to make rural communities more self-sufficient, how to increase employment in areas that have traditionally had pretty high or seasonal unemployment, how to make the transition from declining state funding to local economic generation, how to bring in outside dollars to communities. I mean, these aren't just issues for the people that live in these villages or live in rural areas. It's issues for all of us. We're not just rural and urban. It's one state. There aren't enough of us to really, have that kind of competition. It's self-destructive. And so I think that on that front, people that are really interested in being rural entrepreneurs are going to find a lot of support basically statewide. And I think that there's going to be a lot of programs out there to support them and a lot of mentors and resources. And I'm not saying that you can't find those things in an urban environment, but again, you're dealing with levels of competition, right? I mean, here in Anchorage, you're going to have a much larger pool of entrepreneurs than you would in a much smaller community. So it's easier to get noticed. Plus, you also have a lot more support from regional and village corporations. A lot of them are taking a sort of leading role in developing entrepreneurs and developing the economies in their areas. Well, if you're going to the internet, I mean, there's just so many different resources available. Obviously, the Kauffman Foundation is sort of the preeminent entrepreneurial one-stop shop. Government websites are a great way to get general information. I think that if you look at places like YouTube and the Khan Academy, iTunes University, all the different e-learning sites. I mean, that you can literally learn just about anything from Stanford level professors. I mean, Stanford has an entire curriculum online to learn computer programming, right? You could be in Anaktuvuk Pass or someplace else that is being serviced by not a terribly deep bandwidth internet, and you can still get a Ivy League quality education. I think that that's going to be the game changer for a lot of folks that are really trying to figure out how they can integrate their ideas with a modern sort of world, and I think an outside world, right? I think that learning A, what's possible with technology, and B, how to interact with organizations and people and ideas and thought leaders outside of the state or outside of your area is going to be a real key part of making sure that if you are developing a product or a service that you want to get outside of your immediate area, you know what's expected and you know sort of what the industry standards are. When you're first starting out, it is about, do you understand how a business works? Do you understand how to incorporate? Do you understand how to market? Do you understand how to find mentors? Do you know what you don't know? Because that's the key to making or breaking any business, new or old. You really need to figure out how to do the boring stuff, the less fun stuff. Accounting, right? Accountants maybe, but nobody but accountants get really excited about accounting. You have to learn about the legal issues. How do you figure out what your legal liability is? How do you figure out how to make payroll if you have to hire somebody? How do you hire somebody? Where does the paperwork come from? Right? I mean, these are all simple, basic things that you sort of need to have a fundamental understanding of before you get into the fun stuff of all right, now I've got all that covered. Here's my great idea. I need to develop this. I need to take it to the next level. From that point onward, it's more about really running with your dream, running with your passion. But there's all this grunt work that comes up front that you really need to understand. A second thing that I would really spend a lot of time on, whether you have your idea yet or not, being comfortable talking about yourself and talking about your idea. And again, this isn't specific to rural Alaska. This is across the board. What we find is that if you can't convey a passion and a competence and a understanding of what you're talking about, even if you have these things, if you can't convey that to another person, you have a 10 times more difficult battle to getting your idea off the ground. You know, a poor pitch can make or break your future as a business person, as an entrepreneur. So getting comfortable speaking in small groups and in slightly larger groups is, I think, another key factor. So a pitch is, it's short for elevator pitch. And the concept is that you usually have about 2 minutes of any one person's attention span, right? So if I meet somebody, I can get them to listen to just about anything for 2 minutes. But after that, if I haven't interested them, I've lost them, right? So the pitch for an entrepreneur is your 2-minute spiel that you should practice constantly. You should practice in different markets, in front of different people. You should practice planning for different outcomes. Some pitches you're trying to get money, some pitches you're trying to get entrepreneurs, some pitches you're trying to get somebody to join your company, but they're all in the same vein of a 2-minute spiel on why your idea is good, why you're going to succeed, and why their help in X, Y, or Z is absolutely necessary. And a good pitch is really important for an entrepreneur, and it's not an intuitive thing. 2 minutes sounds like either a long or a short period of time, depending on who you're talking to, but it's really, you know, it's something that you have to work at. And I think that it's a pretty underrated skill. For those of you that don't know, crowdfunding is a way for people to raise large amounts of money, or relatively large amounts of money, from a large group of people who each kick in smaller amounts. So for example, if I needed to raise $10,000 or $1,000, it's a lot easier for me to find 10 people willing to give me $100 than it is to find one person willing to give me $1,000 outright, right? And so it's sort of done on a larger scale. What makes this financing interesting is that it's moved to the internet. So you have what are called rewards-based sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, where in exchange for nominal rewards, t-shirts, games, copies of movies, whatever you're trying to fund, usually they get a piece of it, and sometimes there's more interesting rewards for larger amounts. You get to be a part of helping your band make a CD or helping your local documentarian make a movie. But it's also being used for businesses. The Pebble Watch was crowdfunded on Kickstarter. It actually just crowdfunded the second Pebble Watch, and I think that they both set records for the amount of money raised, millions of dollars. What I like about this is that you don't have to be located anywhere in particular for this to work. It's the internet, right? It works anywhere. That's the beauty of the internet. So somebody from Barrow could crowdfund a movie, and they could raise, you know, quite a bit of money. And that actually happened. I think it was $60,000 or $70,000 raised by the documentary On the Ice, I think is what it was called. And you know, in Barrow. And I guarantee you a lot of that money was raised outside of their area by people who were just interested in what they were doing. I think for rural entrepreneurs, this presents a really unique opportunity. There's a lot of people, like we mentioned, a lot of people are fascinated by Alaska. They're fascinated by what we do, by how we do it, by where we do things. And I think that crowdfunding is a way for us to get our ideas in front of a large group of people that are outside of the state, or at least outside of your village, and give them an opportunity to help fund what you're doing. Well, it depends on the type of crowdfunding, but the most traditional type, rewards-based, is it's going to take a lot of effort, right? I mean, you need a video, you need a pitch, you need rewards, you need to have a plan. If you're making something, you need to figure out, all right, not just what do I do if this fails, but what do I do if this succeeds? It's going to involve a lot of engagement. You know, people, especially if they're not getting a piece of your company, they want a piece of your time. They want to feel like they're part of this process, right? So you're going to need to email them. You're going to need to keep them posted on what's happening. You're going to need to really reach out and market yourself, right? You have a finite amount of time to raise whatever amount of money you're looking for. You need to be able to really have a marketing plan, a strategy in place that's going to take advantage of that time to the fullest. At the end of it, people are going to want their rewards. You've got to figure, how do I get these things from wherever I am to wherever they need to go? And did I factor in the cost of that, right? A lot of people get tripped up because they don't factor in the fact that it costs money to send things. It's not just about the cost of the t-shirt or whatever you're sending, it's also the postage, right? And the bag that it comes in. You got to think it all the way through. The good news is it's been around long enough that there's a ton of resources online. Kickstarter is particularly good about telling you what works, what doesn't work. There's a lot of guides on how to make videos on the cheap, but be prepared for a lot of work. And that goes double for being an entrepreneur in general. Entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And I want to make that clear. I'm not here telling whoever's watching, you should absolutely be an entrepreneur. I am telling anyone watching that you should absolutely look into the idea that you may be an entrepreneur. It's a lot of work and there's risk and it's difficult, but it's so rewarding. And I think that it's also going to be the key to the state's ongoing success. I believe that.